Let's see if I could work this thing. Okay, so I am not going to talk about my research. I'm going to talk about my career path to get there. And so I was an undergraduate at St. Michael's College, and I was a biology major, but my interest in research really didn't begin till afterwards when I was working as environmental chemist and racing sled dogs. This is a true story. So while I was doing that, I was wondering how what I was feeding them was affecting their performance. So serendipity in 2002, serendipity brought me to UVM. I met Dwight Matthews, who's an expert in metabolism and amino acid metabolism. And despite not really being qualified for a position in his lab, he was nice enough to hire me as a technician and give me an opportunity. So in the lab, I met the love of my life. So many of you know that my wife was here for 22 years. I'm not talking about her. I'm talking about a state-of-the-art mass spectrometer. So all as I wanted to know was what this thing could do. That's all I cared about. That's my primary focus. So somehow I was a technician working in the lab. I convinced Dwight to let me get cardiac muscle biopsies from Peter Van Buren, who's a cardiologist here, and be co-mentored by Jim Vigoro, who's an expert in biology and had some expertise in state-of-the-art mass spectrometry at that time. Dwight, being kind of the master entrepreneur, I'm going to say that he helped me craft this position where I was both a technician and a graduate student at the same time. So this was a very unique and controversial position that I was wearing two different hats at the same time. So what I did in my PhD thesis. So we knew that the heart contained cells that were packed with proteins in this dense molecular environment. But with that state-of-the-art mass spectrometer, what I could do is I could identify features within those cells, and I could actually count how many features there were. So here's two versions of Waldo. And the other thing that I noticed was Waldo never had skis on. So throughout my PhD, people said, well, okay, Mike, you're interested in Waldo, you're interested in skis, so are you going to design a drug that mimics skis? I said, no, I don't like drugs. I'm not interested in drugs. But I did like skis. So that's kind of what kept me up all night, was why Waldo wasn't wearing skis. So everybody knows this guy, Dave Warshaw. He's big advocate of athletics here, big promoter of athletics. We've all seen the video. I'm not going to re-show it. So I would talk to Dave and say, well, why wouldn't anybody want to wear skis? I just didn't understand this. And, he kind of convinced me to do a postdoc with him in 2010. So Dave got me into the lab and he said, look, Waldo's just a cartoon. I don't know why you care about this. So he had a little sleight of hand and he said, you need to get serious. You need to focus on a real actor here like Ferris Bueller. And I'm going to tell you why, because Ferris is involved with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a disease that affects 1 in 200 people. And we don't even know what Ferris does under normal conditions. So come to my lab, I'll teach you how to study Ferris, and then you can go and play with your cartoons again. So I said, great, I joined his lab. I developed single molecule techniques, fluorescence-based techniques in his lab. And what we were able to do is capture Ferris in many different states. So we could take pictures of Ferris within muscle. We could find his friends, so the binding partners that he interacted with. And more importantly, we could see how he influenced their behavior. So this was, really pivotal science. And I know I'm being comical, but we had like a really great run. I think we're up to 16 co-authored publications at this point. We have multiple R01s to Dave's lab, K99, R00 to my lab, all thanks to this experience with Dave. So this ended up landing me a position here at UVM as assistant professor in 2016. And, Dave really, he did pull the sleight of hand, but now I became an expert in Ferris. And what I really wanted to know is what Ferris was doing in hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So the thing that you have to remember is that any protein in your body comes from 2 different genes. And what we knew about Ferris is that one of those genes has mutation. And the question was that mutation leading to a concept called haploinsufficiency, where you have less protein, or was there a poison peptide? So this was a big question at the time. So I teamed up with Charlene Day, who is a cardiologist at the University of Michigan, who had a tissue bank. She's now at the University of Pennsylvania. We used my love to really address this question in that tissue. And Thomas O'Leary, who's a super talented undergraduate, kind of repurposed our methods to address this question. And in 2019, we published a paper saying that haploinsufficiency is due to HCM is due to haploinsufficiency. So this was 2019. They celebrated with non-alcoholic cider. But I stayed on the emotional roller coaster with the rest of my lab because I was assistant professor, where we pursued funding in different directions. So then in 2021, I got a really cool email from Tenaya Therapeutics, who are now collaborators and colleagues of mine. And they said, hey, Mike, your paper in 2019 gave us the evidence that we need to start a gene therapy trial for the treatment of HCM. So how this works is based on our information saying that there's a defect in the gene that led to haploinsufficiency. Tenaya generates a virus. They pack DNA into that virus, and they give it to a human. And the question is whether or not they're able to restore the content of the protein and cure the disease. So my lab is actively involved with this project. They received approval for their gene therapy in 2023. We're now part of the MyPeak-1 clinical trial, where we're the first ever lab to use protein as an endpoint for a clinical trial. We're also involved with the Ridge-1 clinical trial, which is related to Ferris's cousin, and the MyClimb natural history study, which is looking at the outcomes, the probability that children will develop HCM with one of these mutations. So I just want to leave off on some serious points. So research requires dedication. So it takes time and dedication as you hone your craft. It also requires teamwork, right? So you need a good team around you, and you need to be a good teammate and support the rest of your teammates. And the final point is that research is incremental. When we're kind of in the trenches, we could just see the step that we're working on, right? But if you build really strong steps that stand the test of time, they stack on top of one another and they can have serious impact. And that's it. Yep.